giving a presentations. You know that the oral presentations is another significant part of your assignment, which most of the courses will require you to do the presentations for your assignment. There are much to learn regarding the presentations. It is not simply speaking in front of the audience, and in these videos, we're going to discuss a bit how you can make the good presentations. First, let us look at some recommendations for the oral presentations. You will need to be familiar with the presentations conditions. If you are actually doing the presentations in person, that means in front of the audience, it is always a good practice of you go to the presentation room earlier to be familiar with the space, know where is the screen, know where is the power plug, and get yourself prepared for the presentations. You may also observe the size of the room, imagine the audience, and probably test your voice in the room so that during the presentations, everyone will know what you are talking about. You might need to also plan where you're going to stand, observe where is the locations of the LCD projector, make sure you don't block the LCD projector that will distract the views of the screen in front of the audience. Also observe if there is any PA system, which is the sound systems, and how you can deal with it. If you are doing virtual presentations through some online platform such as the Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Zoom or others, you need to be familiar with the features before your presentations. This will boost your confidence with the ability of managing those online platforms during your virtual presentations. Next, you should keep your presentation slides simple. Avoid the complex animations and complicated graphics. You need to aware the most important part of the presentations is to get the message effectively delivered. The aesthetic view and the animations are secondary. They should act as to complement your presentations, but not to distract the presentations. The graphics shouldn't be too catchy that distract the audience, and normally I would recommend that to remove all the animations so that you have full control of the pace of the presentations without any interruptions. Sometimes you see the graphics or words flying here and there. It is rather distracting. You should only use the relevant and necessary graphics only. Sometimes you need graphics because you know that pictures worth 1,000 words. There are certain things which is more effectively presented through graphic. That means the graphic now is important and it will help the audience to comprehend better. Then you only incorporate those. The ultimate goal is not for the aesthetic purpose, but if you could produce a graphic which really complements your presentations and at the same time is nice looking, that would be a bonus to your presentations. This one requires effort and you will need to really spend time to design your slides. Next, you will need to structure and plan the discharge of informations. You will need to progressively construct the understanding of the audience, helping them to understand the content of your presentations step by step. Be careful with the conditions of overflow of informations, where you throw out a lot of points to the audience, but the audience are unable to grab every single one of them. This will lead to disconnections between you and the audience. That means you really need to plan the flow of delivery. Some information needs to come first before the subsequent. That will best help the audience to comprehend the message and content. And do not just read the content. Some students may be nervous standing in front of the audience and spend most of the time for the presentations reading the text in the slides. In fact, the audience can read the slide themselves. They are looking for more insight in terms of the content. Your verbal presentations will help the audience to comprehend better, as well as to evaluate the content given in the concise manner in the slide to give better understanding to the audience. Your presentations needs to be consistent and at a comfortable pace. You will need to control your pace in the very ideal situations that the pace of you speaking is slightly slower than you are thinking, because normally you will need to think about the next information to be given to the audience after you have completed a statement. To avoid interruptions in terms of the pace when you are searching for the information to be given to the audience, maybe you can slightly control the pace of speaking so that what the audience hear from you, it will be at a consistent pace. Don't talk too fast, because the audience will need to take some time to really understand the message behind your presentations. Don't talk too slow, which seems to be quite abnormal in our daily life. It should be just nice or slightly slower than the typical pace, so that your thinking process will be faster than your speaking pace for uninterrupted presentations. You need to mind your non-verbal skill as well. This includes the eye contacts, the gestures, and you should vary the voice for emphasis. Always have eye contact with the audience to observe their response, whether the audience are attentive, are they fully engaged with your presentations, and this gives you an idea how you're going to address your presentations at the later stage. When you see the audience is not interested, most likely there will be something wrong with your presentations. You will have to make quick adjustment in terms of your presentations in order to gain their attentions. Also mind your gestures. It should portray confidence, make yourself look professionals, and not to be distracting. You know that the voice carry a lot of informations. Even by reading the same set of text, different intonations will give you different pieces of informations. You should fully utilize those advantages, and it is very useful ways for you to emphasize something. Next, during your presentations, you will need to discuss the meaning of the result. These are some common mistakes by the students. They presented the results and expect the audience to comprehend by themselves. You know that as a presenter, you are obligated to help the audience to understand better. If you could highlight something interesting, if you could clearly explain the meaning of the result, and you can demonstrate the linkage between the result and what you are going to say in subsequence, the presentations become more lively and the audience will understand better. Doing presentations is not easy. It is not simply reading the words or having the information spoken out to the audience. You need to consider how you're going to make the message to be delivered effectively without any ambiguities. Next, you will need to reinforce the key point in the concluding slides. There should be some takeaway message. After the presentations, the most ideal situation is that the audience can still remember certain important key points. You can take the concluding slide to reinforce that. Next, let us look at the priority for the presentations. This is also very important to the students, and this is the common mistake done by the students, most likely due to the misconceptions in terms of the functions of the presentations, as well as lacking of the understanding in terms of the limitations of the presentations. Let us look into it one by one. We mentioned that presentations is not just having the content or information spoken out to the audience. It is actually an outcome of digestions by the presenter. And the main role of the presenters is to help the audience to understand better. That means how much information that can be acquired by the audience is very much dependent on how the presenter presented the content. What are the priorities? How it is being presented. We have two columns here. The first column represents those with higher priority, and the second column which is the lower priority. You need to position yourself covering all those is high priority, trying to avoid those which is not really important. First, it is your top priority that the audience understand your presentations. The purpose of the presentations is for delivery of the message, and those message needs to be meaningful to the audience. It is not for the audience to feel that you are knowledgeable, or it is not for the audience to feel that or to know that you have done a lot of work, spent a lot of effort, but it is not meaningful to them. It is the presenter to service the audience, not the audience to have good impressions of the presenters. But if you do the presentation right, the good impressions will come automatically. Therefore, you need to know what is the top priority of your presentations. Whichever you do, is not to demonstrate you are very clever, you are knowledgeable, you did a lot of work, or those you can have those implied to the audience, provided that you do not compromise in terms of the understanding of the audience to your presentations. If you cannot fulfill both, then you should just go for the effective delivery of information or message to the audience. Next, you should focus more on the structures or organizations of the content. It should be more conceptual and principle based. There should be some discussions. You need to contribute critical inputs and findings, and there will be some take-home message. What you see here, you are dealing with the macro level of the content to be given to the audience. These are something which is easily understood and can easily be remembered by the audience after the presentations. Less emphasis are to be given for the details, informations, numbers, data and results. It is difficult for the audience to remember, and normally when the audience see the results and data or specifications and numbers, they will need to think further in terms of the meanings and the message behind those informations. You should have those informations being emphasized. And most of the time, it is inevitable of you to present these informations in the presentation slide. But during your presentations, less emphasis is given to this. Most likely this is going to be served as the display, as an evidence to support whichever you're going to deliver in terms of the message, concept, principles or findings. Next, most of the students may have a misconception that the presentations need to disclose 100% of the informations. The students are very guided by that 100% informations, which somehow restrain their performance in the presentations. Especially when you deal with a lot of details, it is very hard to effectively deliver to the audience. When too much details is being presented, it will be as if the presenters reading the informations and value, as if speaking alien language to the audience. Which in this 100% informations, they are also not equally important. There will be some part of it which are essential, and some part of it serve as supporting informations to complement some findings and concepts. Therefore, you should just focus on those which is essential. Most likely is going to be 30 to 50% of the content in your reports. You know that you are given limited time for the presentations, which is typically within 15 to 30 minutes. But you know that when you go through your design project, which stretch through the entire semester. So much time that you have put into the design as well as producing the report. It is nearly impossible for you to have everything presented within that 15 to 30 minutes. Therefore, you should only present those which is essential and those which is relevant. You don't have to present 100% of the informations, because by the time when it comes to the presentations, your lecturer should have already read through your design report. This is the time that you demonstrate to the lecturer that you are able to distinguish what are the significant informations over those which is insignificant. Next, higher priorities are given to the graphical presentations such as pictures, tables, illustrations, charts, technical drawing, as well as some short notes. Try to avoid long text and complex sentences. You know that the presentation slide which is given to the audience normally display in the short durations for the audience to understand. If you provide long text there, before the readers can complete reading, most likely you have turned into the next slide. That means the readers are in the pace of hurry, try to keep up with the flow of your presentation, which the informations given in the slides are quite diluted, and the audience will need to spend effort to quickly identify the significant point so that the audience can proceed with the further discussions in the later stage of your presentations. You need to know that you are the one that gone through the work of the assignment. The audience might not be experiencing what you experience. The time that you give for the audience to fully understand what you are going to present, it will be too short for the audience. Therefore, you should by all means to help the audience to quickly comprehend the content. Next, your presentation slide should be consistent and harmony. Pay more emphasis in terms of the good contrast in the presentation slide, and make sure all the text on the slides are clear. Colorful and sharp backgrounds of the slides may not necessarily help you in terms of the presentations. It could distract the audience, and it could compromise the contrast of the text, making certain text to be quite difficult to read, leaving the audience to guess what text it is so that they can comprehend the content. What we are talking about here is that we are actually focusing more on the effective delivery of the message. That is the utmost concern as a presenter. The other things, whether the audience feel you are knowledgeable, whether your slides is colorful and beautiful, those are secondary. If you could achieve those without compromising those which is of higher priority, that will be a bonus to you. But if you have insufficient time, you cannot have both together. Might as well you just focus on those which is priority. After all, if you look at the presentation part in terms of the rubrics, you see most of the assessment criteria are focusing on how you deliver the message.